Tragedy with Dick and Jane by Jeremy Dickerson. She's been here before. She has walked through that door every day, in fact, as far back as she could remember. This was her front door after all, the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Dick and Jane Worthington. Jane stood for a moment gazing at her front door with a sense of nostalgia. There was something about it today that just took her back to her very first time going through that door. Must have been the way Dick swept her off her feet and carried her over the threshold. Oh, but if only she knew what she knows now. Maybe things would be different. The door was locked. Jane searches for her keys, but figures she left them in the car. Luckily, she remembered where the hide key was. After unlocking the door, she put the key back in the fake rock next to the stoop. She shut the door behind her and took a deep breath in through her nose. There was a certain smell in the air. It was comforting. It was home. It was also quiet, which is rather rare for having a 5-year-old in the house. But what was she thinking? She just got back from dropping off little Nell, as she called her, to a slumber party. Jane had the night all to herself in peace and quiet. The first thing I need, she thought to herself, is a nice cup of hot tea. As she proceeded to the kitchen, she noticed a certain picture hanging on the wall. It was of Dick and Nell. But where was she in the picture? Ah, yes, she remembered. She took the picture. They were at the zoo. No, the park. Yes, she recognized that fountain in the background. It was definitely the park. Her countenance fell. She remembered why they went there in the first place. Dick was trying to make up for his recent infidelity. Jane had found his dress shirt with smudged lipstick on the collar. When she confronted him, he just denied it. She reflected on their early years of marriage. They were happy and completely in love. After Nell was born, it all changed. She suspected it might have been the baby weight or her stretched out vagina, but she wasn't sure. What she was sure of was that Dick started cheating on her. He would say that he was working late or had to go out of town on business, but she was smarter than that stupid prick. What a fitting name, she thought. Dick. 'Cause he sure was acting like one. The taste of disgust filled her mouth. She dare not swallow it, so she spit it on the picture in contempt. Jane carefully wiped off the little bit of spatter that landed on Nell's side of the photograph. Jane loved her daughter very much. Maybe that's why she kicked Dick out of the house once he hit her. It started slow, as it usually does in these situations. It was verbal abuse at first, and it was just towards Jane. She figured it was just retaliation for her finding out about his adultery. But then he started hitting her. She took it because she loved him, didn't she? Yes, she did love him very much. Still loves the man he was. But when he started hitting Nell, Jane refused to take it anymore. She kicked him out of the house and filed for a divorce, and got a restraining order against him. No good that did, though. He kept coming around. When he did, he would be drunk or smelling of some whore. He would also have that other scent, though. The one that she fell in love with. His cologne. Just thinking about it brought the scent back to her memory. She could almost smell it now. Jane went into the kitchen, got the teapot, filled it up with water, and put it on to boil. She figured while that was getting ready, she would go to the living room and find something to watch. She sat on the couch and started flipping through the channels. A news channel was running an emergency report. She flipped back to it to hear the report. There were 3 men that escaped the city jail. 2 of them were caught, but 1 is still at large. She didn't need to hear any more. Dick was in that jail for violating the restraining order. It was the smell of his cologne in the hall that made her realize he was in the house. She heard footsteps coming down the stairs. The hairs on her arms stood up. A surge of adrenaline pumped into her heart like nos into a racer's engine. The choice was fight or flight, and fight it was. She wasn't going to put up with his abuse any longer. Dick was coming down the stairs. He heard the TV come on. He walked into the living room and turned it off. Then he could hear the squeal of the teapot in the kitchen. He thought it was all real odd, but he went to the kitchen anyway. There he saw the steaming teapot and took it off the eye. Without warning, a loud thud nearly knocked him to the floor. It was Jane. She hit him with a frying pan in the back of the head, which knocked him to his knees. He turned and grabbed her arm as she began to swing again. He reached with his other hand to pull himself to his feet, but he placed it right on the hot eye of the stove. He yelled in pain while backing away, holding his burnt hand. Jane reached over, grabbed the teapot, took off the lid, and splashed the still scalding water at Dick's face. He blocked it best he could with his arms, but most of the water got him anyway. He stumbled down the hallway, trying to recover. Jane, feeling the benefit of the upper hand, strutted towards him with her pan at the ready. "What are you doing here?" Jane cried out. "You broke out of prison to what? Finish what you started? I bet you were surprised that little Nell wasn't here." The burn finally subsided from Dick's face, but his hand was still throbbing. He asks, "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," Jane replies. "Those tricks don't work anymore, you asshole. You won't harm me or little Nell after today." She raised that pan to make a fatal swing. "Stop!" Dick pleaded. "I never hurt you or Nell, and I was never in prison." "Lies." "No, Jane, you've been lying to yourself. They called and told me you broke out. I took Nell to stay with my parents until they found you and brought you back in." "Stop lying to me. I just took Nell to a slumber party." "Jane, you're a paranoid schizophrenic. You've been in the hospital for the mentally ill for the past 6 months." Jane raised the pan higher and said, "You're not fooling anyone here. You were in jail for hitting me and little Nell." "You're delusional," Dick said. "You're out of touch with reality. Shortly after Nell was born, you started creating these ideas that I was cheating on you. You even took your own lipstick and rubbed it on my shirt collar. When I asked you what you were doing, you started grilling me. About a year ago, you started getting violent. We finally had to call the police and they took you to the hospital." Jane thought for a moment. None of what he was saying made any sense. The memories of the past 6 months were so clear to her. He had to be lying. "You're lying through your teeth, Dick, and it's the last time." She reared back and swung as hard as she could. The edge of the pan connected with Dick's jaw and dislodged several of his teeth, projecting them across the room. He went unconscious. She stepped closer to finish him. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in a mirror on the wall. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. Her hair was matted. It looked like it hadn't been combed in a week. It looked like the woman hadn't even had a shower in over a month. She was wearing a white shirt with white pants. At least they used to be white. Now they looked more yellow with stains all over them. She saw a logo on her shirt pocket. It said, "Hospital for the Mentally Ill." The memories from the past 6 months, though real memories, came rushing back into her mind like a flood. It was her. She was the Dick. She was the violent one. The proof was even lying on the floor next to her. Dick was still lying there unconscious with blood trickling out of the corner of his mouth. Horror hit her. All the hate that she'd built up towards Dick immediately ran inward. She was drowning in it. Jane took the picture of Dick and Nell off the wall and took it into the kitchen with her. She sat down on the floor and wiped off the spit from earlier. She ran her finger along Dick and little Nell in the photo, then said a sincere apology to it. She sat for a moment, too angry at herself to even cry. She wanted to, but wouldn't allow herself. That other side of her was ready to kill Dick for causing all that pain, and still wanted to kill the person responsible. Jane reached up and took a butcher knife out of the drawer. She apologized to the picture one last time, then held it close to her heart. She then took the knife and plunged it as deep and as fast as she could into her stomach. It hurt at first. It hurt a whole awful lot. But she felt she deserved the pain. Worse, even. Within minutes, it was gone. The only thing she could feel was the constant creeping of cold. It started at the tips of her fingers and toes, then inched its way closer to her heart. A few more moments pass as she is holding the picture tight. Dick comes rushing into the kitchen and finds Jane fading in a puddle of her own blood. He runs to her side and holds her close. She tries to tell him that she is sorry, but he assures her that it's not her fault. He puts his hand over her stomach to stop the bleeding, but he knows it's too late. He leans over and whispers in her ear, "I forgive you, and I love you." A light twinkled in her eye, and she smiled ever so slightly, then breathed her last breath.